Steve Palazzolo, our good buddy, senior analyst at Pro Football Focus, co-host of Pro Football Focus NFL podcast. He joins us on the program. Best roster talent right now going into this season is who, Steve?
That is the Buffalo Bills. I think when you look at the Bills and what they have built and adding Von Miller to the mix, I think they have look, when you're building around a young quarterback, the Bills are like the blueprint right now for how to build around Josh Allen with the wide receiver talent, with Stephon Diggs, with Gabriel Davis, and Von Miller comes in to add to that defensive line. And once Tre'Davious White gets healthy at cornerback, I think there's a reason why a lot of people have the Bills as the favorite for the Super Bowl because they're pretty good all around.
Okay, but is there a big drop off between 1 and 2 with roster talent?
No, I mean, I think the top 5 is pretty close. When you look at a team like the Bucs, I think people might be sleeping on the Bucs because Tom Brady took a little vacation during training camp and Rob Gronkowski retired, but you still bring in a Julio Jones, all of the other receiver talent, a couple questions on the offensive line, but the Bucs are up there. The Chiefs are still up there, even though there's some question marks there. The Packers are still good. I just think those other teams just have more question marks when it comes to top to bottom talent than a team like the Bills.
But you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've prided themselves on having a great receiving core. You lose Tyreek Hill. Kansas City fans look at that offense, and what are they going to think this year?
I think they'll take a step back before they take a step forward. I think there'll be some growing pains with Juju Smith-Schuster, with the rookie Sky Moore, with Marquez Valdez-Scantling trying to replace some of the deep threat that Tyreek Hill was. But the Chiefs made a decision to be better everywhere. Just to have a better roster rather than just a great receiving core. So I think it's going to show up on the defensive side of the ball. The 2 rookies, George Karlaftis in the first round, Trent McDuffie at corner. Both of those guys should improve that team. But I think the offense takes a bit of a step back. There'll be some games where the Chiefs might be saying, man, we could use a big play. We could use that 10-yard pass that turns into a 60-yard touchdown that Tyreek Hill brought to the table. But I think the Chiefs in the long term are going to be a better team because they essentially replaced Tyreek Hill with 5 players. But it might, the offense might not be as explosive this season.
Talk me out of picking the Chargers for the Super Bowl.
No, that's who I picked on the PFF NFL podcast this week. That was my.
No.
I said they go through the wild card round, but listen, here's how I would talk you out of it, or myself. I've been hyping the Chargers for the last 10 years. They're like the offseason darlings.
You and me both. I've been doing this. I've been punished. I've been hurt. I've been let down.
They're the offseason darlings, but they do let us down with some crazy. But I think Brandon Staley's changing it. He's changing the mentality. They're going to be aggressive. We know they're going to go for it on 4th down. They're going to maximize possessions. Justin Herbert's balling. And you add Khalil Mack to the mix. You add a J.C. Jackson. And I think that team is really set up for success.
More likely, the Rams make the Super Bowl or they don't make the playoffs. More likely.
Oh, I'd say... let me say Rams make the Super Bowl just because the NFC is not nearly as deep as the AFC.
Okay.
I do think the NFC West is strong with the 49ers there in the Cardinals, but I think that the elites of the NFC, the Packers and Bucks and the Rams, I think they're going to be there at the end. Whereas in the NFC, the AFC, I think you're looking at some of these, if the Bengals didn't make the playoffs, would we be all that surprised? Maybe not, just because it's so deep in the AFC. So I think the NFC has a little bit tighter path where the Rams could make the Super Bowl again.
He's a senior analyst at Pro Football Focus and co-host of the Pro Football Focus NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo joining us. I look at the rosters with the Eagles. I look at the rosters with the Cardinals and also the Raiders. And my big question mark is quarterback. And maybe I shouldn't have as much of a question mark with Kyler Murray as I do with the other, but am I wrong in that I should, does Pro Football Focus, how do they look at Jalen Hurts, Derek Carr, and Kyler Murray?
No, I mean, I think when you're looking at the best quarterbacks in the league and you're looking at is quarterback a question mark, you're trying to say, is this guy a top 8 guy that I can believe in every single year? And if you're asking, is Kyler Murray there yet? Maybe not. I think he was top 8-ish last year. Certainly dropped off the second half of the year, but he's gotten better every single season. I feel confident in Kyler Murray, at least putting the Cardinals in position to succeed. I think Derek Carr is probably on the fringe of that, kind of how I thought Matthew Stafford had been for his 10-plus years in Detroit. Nobody was saying nobody should have been saying Matthew Stafford was a top 10 quarterback of his era because there was a pretty distinct top 8 or 9. But once those guys retired, Stafford could kind of slide in there. I think Carr has that ability. And with Carr plus Devontae Adams now, I think we're going to see fireworks there. I think the Raiders have the playmakers that Derek Carr could have one of his best seasons. And we're going to revisit that halfway through the year and be like, man, this guy's on pace for 5,000 plus yards and 40 touchdowns. Maybe he's better than we thought. And the Jalen Hurts one is fascinating because I think the Eagles have taken advantage of the fact that he is on this rookie contract. They could go on draft night and say, what's better to come out of the first round than with an A.J. Brown, than with a game-changing wide receiver? And that's going to make Devontae Smith, last year's first-round receiver, all the better.
Yeah.
That's going to make this running game that they turned to around week 6 or 7 last year. That's going to make the run game plus the ability to win through the air. They just have more flexibility on offense. So I think they've done a great job building around Jalen Hurts. Now it's a matter of, okay, can you go win games for us? That is a big question mark still for the Eagles, though.
Okay, how do you gauge Trey Lance, because you don't have a large sample size? So how does Pro Football Focus look at him this season?
Yeah, for me, it's just looking at his skill set and trying to project what's going to happen there. And the two big things for me is the 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo had one of the most efficient passing attacks in the NFL, and they did it without a lot of downfield passes. Jimmy Garoppolo had one of our lowest big-time throw rates, so those special throws down the field, but he was still number 2 in the NFL in yards per attempt. Meaning there's open receivers, there's yards after the catch, there's a great system in place. Trey Lance has the ability to make those big time throws. He has the ability to throw the ball 40 plus yards down the field and stretch the field in a way that Kyle Shanahan has not in a long time. And then you add Trey Lance's rushing ability, and the Shanahans are just known for making life difficult for defenses when it comes to the run game. You add in a run threat like Trey Lance, and there's a million different things that the Niners can do. So I feel like Trey Lance has a skill set that even if he has some growing pains, even if he's not making every perfect read or not as efficient as Jimmy Garoppolo throw for throw, Trey Lance can add big playability both through the air and on the ground, and that makes the 49ers pretty scary with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays.
Your concerns about Dak Prescott are?
The last time we saw Dak Prescott without Amari Cooper, so right in the middle of the 2018 season. And there was a point in Dak's career where he was dropping off. He had a good rookie year. He had 2 seasons after that where, for us, PFF grades, he ranked around 19th or 20th. And then Amari Cooper showed up. And once he had Dak, those good receivers around him, his production went through the roof. And he's been consistent. And probably some of it is just his regular development. But Dak hasn't had a non-top 3 receiving core in years. So he's had this incredible supporting cast, offensive line plus receivers. Now you've got 3 new starters on the offensive line. You have no Amari Cooper. CeeDee Lamb can step up into that spot, but you have an injured Michael Gallup trying to come back. The Cowboys have been at their best with an excellent top 5-ish type of offensive line and a top 3 type of receiving group, and we don't have that this year for Dallas. So for me, it's the supporting cast, and can Dak elevate the rest of that roster? Because we haven't really seen him need to do that in 4 or 5 years now.
The worst roster talent-wise is located where?
I think it's between Chicago or Houston. I think both teams are rebuilding. Chicago, it's probably the Bears just because they legitimately gutted that roster. The Texans, they waited for the whole Deshaun Watson thing, and then they started to add talent back to the roster. They started to, but Chicago has questions on the offensive line, out wide at receiver. All of their defensive playmakers are young or in their first couple of years. Roquan Smith, might be the guy that they're going to build around, but he's a linebacker. So I think it's the Bears. It's year 2 of Justin Fields, and unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to get a great gauge for what Fields can do just because the whole supporting cast is certainly not there. But I get it. Ryan Poles had to come in. He had a salary cap. He had salary cap issues. They didn't have a ton of draft picks, and they're starting to build it up from scratch in Chicago.
Have fun tonight. Always great to talk to you. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Dan. Happy football.
Happy football. Absolutely. Steve Palazzolo.